Hi, this is Brasscheck, and we're recording this on Sunday, June 14th, and we're going to change our publishing schedule a little bit. I have to admit, I had no idea. I mean, I realized that the government was going to make a tragedy of this COVID scam. I had no idea the extent to which they were going to do it or how long it was going to persist. I mean, even I am shocked. And apparently this thing is going to go on and on and on and on without end. So what we're going to do, and the big challenge is just keeping up with all the bullshit from the news media, which is coming from various elements of the government, which is ultimately coming from pharma and Fauci and friends. Because that's what this is all about. And make no mistake about this. This is their usual pump and dump scheme. They've been doing it for decades. They take a potentially real health problem and they turn it into a insane drama that sets off a gold rush of taxpayer subsidized drug development, vaccine development, testing, etc., etc. And everybody goes to the bank and we end up poorer with a lower standard of living, and our healthcare still sucks. And let's just focus on that for 1 second before I go ahead with today's content. Before COVID, right? COVID's now changed the world. Before COVID, United States health stats were so bad that we did not even rank as a developed country. In other words, we were off the scale. No other developed country had stats anywhere near as bad as ours. And quite a few developing countries have stats as good or better. So we already had a horrendously bad health system. Now, interestingly enough, our per capita cost for healthcare, what do you think it is? Take every person in America, take the money that pharma extracts and the hospitals and the insurance companies and all the other scammers, and come up with a number. So you got 330 million people. You have the amount of money that the medical industry extracts from us. Every person in this country per capita has $10,000 taken out of their hide every year by the medical industrial complex. That's a big number. And it's twice the number of the nearest competitor on earth. So we have the most expensive, the most rapacious, the most corrupt medical system in the world, and we're getting really bad results. And I'll tell you this, and I'm not exaggerating, if you want good medical care, go to Guatemala City, which is a really, no offense to my friends in Guatemala, who are lovely people, and it's a, country's got its great features, but it's a rat's nest of a city. I mean, it's a horror show. And yet, if you go to a private hospital in Guatemala City, you will absolutely get better care than any place that I know of in the United States, including Manhattan or Beverly Hills. So process that. And that's true. I haven't been to every country, but it is amazing how bad our healthcare system is. And the worst one of the worst systems is New York City. I want to throw these numbers out. I'll bring this up again later in a separate show. But you need to hear these numbers. So New York City has about 3% of actually less than 3% of the total nation's population, but it had 20% of the COVID deaths. Okay? Logic tells you that COVID didn't suddenly get 10 times more contagious and more deadly in New York City than it was in the rest of the country or the rest of the world. I mean, New York City's numbers are so bad, there are third world nations that are performing better. So why did 10 times as many people die in New York City as anywhere else? Well, we put up the videos about it. We have videos of the nurses talking about the criminal behavior going on among doctors and nurses in the public hospitals in New York City. So it's not a disease problem. I mean, we'll assume there's a disease. We'll assume it's spreading. We'll assume if you are a vulnerable person and you get it, you might have a serious health problem. We'll take all those things at face value. But when there's a 10 times, not a, that's not double. I mean, I know I'm kind of like emphasizing this because sometimes it's easy to let these things just wash over you. We're not talking about 50% more deaths, which would be astronomical. Statistically, that would be, everyone would have to stop and pay attention. We're not talking about 100% more deaths. We're talking about 1,000 times more deaths, 10 times more deaths, higher death rate than any other piece of the United States. So it can't be the disease that did it. It has to be the government and medical response. Now, has anybody mentioned that in the news anywhere ever? No, they haven't. But we have seen a whole lot of, oh, they're heroes. Let's line the nurses up and applaud them because they're such heroes. You're not supposed to say bad things about the frontline heroes. And yet, there's a lot of, there are honest nurses that have stepped forward. And interestingly enough, they're all coming from other parts of the country. One came out and said, look, I was working with COVID patients in Florida. We didn't have a single death. Now I'm here on contract working with COVID patients in Queens. We've only had one survive. So in other words, 99% deaths in New York City, 0% deaths in Florida. Same disease. Now I brought this up in a video that we made, and it needs to be said. Tony Fauci is very close friends with the Cuomo family. He knew Mario Cuomo when Mario Cuomo was governor of New York. He knew Andrew and Chris Cuomo when they were young men. And he's known them continuously. And we have a clip where Chris Cuomo is going on and on about Tony Fauci and how great he is and how nice it was that Tony Fauci called him personally every day. Think about that. Fauci has time to call Chris Cuomo every day on the telephone. You think he might be talking to his brother Andrew too? Anyway, we have a film about that. Everybody, I hope, will watch it. And I really hope you're sharing these things, especially with people who have audiences. We're reaching out now to try to get some of this material on other outlets. They can have it, they can steal it, they can put their name on it. I don't care how it gets out, as long as it gets out. And we don't even get reply emails. I think I'll start putting up a list of the people that are not. They're not even bothering to reply. All the same information that you're getting, they're getting, and they don't think it's worth reporting, sharing, or even stealing. I'm mystified. But, I guess this is going to be a longer recording than I expected, but when it's on the news media, whatever the topic is, doesn't matter what it is, assume it's bullshit. So your job is not to swallow it whole. Your job is to say, how exactly is this bullshit? And if you take that frame of mind when you turn on the news, you won't be fooled anywhere near as often as we are. One of the first things that I went to is, where are we getting this information from? Well, very quickly, it's very obvious we're getting it from Tony Fauci. Okay, who is Tony Fauci? Well, he's got a track record. He has done this kind of thing, over-exaggerate epidemics continuously, and it always has the same result. It's a gold rush for the drug companies. I mean, as they say in the military, once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, 3 times is enemy action. He's been doing this for 36 years. But I think I have an even simpler proof that there's something very wrong here, which is the New York numbers. And I'm just going to repeat them one more time. New York City has a death rate 10 times the rate of any other part of the United States. It's the United States average. I mean, it actually has a death rate 30, 40, 50 times certain sections of the United States. That can't be because of contagion, and that can't be because of the nature of the disease. That has to be the nature of the response. And we've had enough nurses and even one doctor who stepped forward and saying, we're screwing up. We're putting people on ventilators that don't belong on ventilators. And we did a video on this. I believe I can't believe it. We're the only ones that have done this, that have gone into the medical details of what it means to put someone on a vent. It means a lot of drugs, 8, 9, 10, 12 different powerful drugs. And we're not talking about taking a pill. We're talking about IV. So those poor people are lying there completely knocked out as if they're under anesthesia. They've got painkillers, they've got paralyzers, drugs that prevent them from moving, and then they have drugs that just knock them out. It's all coming to them via a drip. These are dangerous, powerful drugs. They're getting no food. The only nutrition they're getting is also coming from a drip. And in some places, the nurses have admitted these patients are not being supervised because they've been terrorized that, the vent is so dangerous. So the patients are on long lines. No one's even looking after them. In fact, one of the nurses that we had said people are dying and they don't even, the nurses and doctors don't even know they're dead. Hours go by. So in New York State, and if we remember the news, Andrew Cuomo was screaming literally that he had to have 30,000 vents, and he got a whole bunch of them, and by God, in New York City they've been using them, and according to the nurse, I'm not even going to give my own opinion, her opinion is people are being murdered on these vents. Okay, and if there's an old saying about seeing sausage made. If you've ever seen sausage made, you might not want to eat it anymore. I have seen the inside of hospitals and behind the doors, and you may have too, maybe as a worker or maybe as a patient, and you've either had that experience or you haven't. If you haven't had the experience, you probably think that hospitals are run just like they are on TV. If you've had the experience, you know that hospitals can be very, very, very messed up places run by very, very messed up people and staffs. Okay, I'll just say that. Some of you are nodding and go, yeah, I know. Others are like, oh, that's horrifying, that's shocking. Well, I'm sorry. Sorry to burst the bubble there. If you end up in a hospital, an emergency situation, and you're cared for well, you were a very lucky person. It's not always the way it turns out. Anyway, I'm finally getting to the point today. But anyway, the thing I want to say is there's so much here, and it seems to be never ending. And the tidal wave of bullshit coming out of the news media is never ending, and they've got a new twist on it literally every day, sometimes every hour. What I'm going to do now is just make stuff and put it out there. No schedule. As soon as I make it, it's going to go out. And then in the evening at 9 o'clock, we'll make a replay or all the links of everything that was done that day. Some days it might be a normal day. Some days it might be a heavy day. I don't know. It just depends on what the media is. But the media is so dishonest and so full of nonsense and so easy to see through. It's not even that hard. You just have to have the frame of mind, and you have to have the time, and you have to have the stomach for it. And right now I have all three, and so I'm putting this together for you. So we're going to look at this clip. Apparently in some states there's a 25% increase in cases. Oh my God, it's the end of the world. And some states are deciding, well, I guess we can't open up after all, or gee, we're going to have to unopen up. We were open, but now we're going to close again. Let me just explain something, guys. At best, thanks to this garbage science and this hysteria, we are facing a multi-year depression-level economic catastrophe. Okay, that's the best outcome now. All right, even if this had only lasted 2 weeks, it would have taken us a couple of years to dig out. Now that it's gone on for months and months, now we're looking at absolutely years of depression-level financial displacement, which is going to kill way more people than any respiratory disease, and it's going to make a lot of people miserable. So that's the best case scenario. Okay, the worst case scenario, and it becomes more and more likely every day, is that the lunatics at the Fed are going to distort the U.S. and world economy to such a catastrophic level that it's going to be a essentially an extinction event. It won't just be it won't just be several brutal bad years. It will be a permanent distortion of our economic system that we won't be able to come back from. And I know that sounds like an extreme statement. I will put a show together to explain that, why that is so. But anyway, that's what we're facing now, and that's why I'm going to just do more, and I hope you'll do more too. You know who the big podcasters are, you know who the big YouTube channels are. You need to inundate these people and let them know about what we're reporting, because there is definitely some good reporting. Pam Popper's doing some great stuff. David Crow, God bless him, is doing some great stuff, but there isn't a lot of it, and a lot of it is very sporadic. We had an unfortunate experience with drawing a blank on her name, Judy Mikowitz. She had a lot of important things to say, but she also was kind of incoherent. I'm just going to say it. Way too technical. And she had a personal grievance. And all those three things add up to a big problem. And unfortunately, and I don't think it was an accident, she was given an enormous amount of attention. And now it becomes very easy to discount anybody that has anything to say about Fauci and the people around him. And that's an unfortunate thing. And a lot of the podcasters are now moving on to the next thing. Well, guys, there is no next thing. If we don't get this right, it's going to be bad. We don't see it. I'm going to just give you an analogy from nature. You can take a tree that's flowering, like an apple tree or a pear tree, and you can cut a limb from it, and it has buds on it, and you can stick it in water, and those buds will flower. You'll get one more season of buds. If you think that you're going to be able to get those buds again, those flowers again, the following year and the following year and the following year after that, you're just wrong. You don't understand nature. And a lot of people don't understand the nature of economic systems. You cannot do this level of damage to an economy. So we're still flowering. I mean, as bad as things are, we're really not feeling it yet. I know a lot of people individually are. I know there's some sporadic shortages and there's some price increases, but this is nothing compared to what we're going to face next season, when all these destructive economic things come to fruition. And there isn't going to be another season of flowering tree branch. We're going to have to rebuild everything from scratch. It's going to be very slow and it's going to be very arduous. And you know what? We're not going to have the money to do it because we've blown all the money. So this is really serious. So I hope, on every page now we put all our top hits. I mean, we now have about 20 different videos on every page. Find a good one that you think is resonant and send it to your favorite podcaster, YouTuber, blogger. Forget the mass media. They don't care. They're never going to care. And that includes Fox, if you're under any delusions about that. Just do what you can. I'm doing what I can. All right, so 25% increase. Oh, the world's coming to an end. Okay, number one, the number of tests being given has accelerated radically. Okay, they're telling everybody they have to get tested. They're setting up testing facilities everywhere. Of course, there's going to be, quote, more cases. If you didn't, and this may seem like a silly thing, but it's just reality. If you didn't test anybody, you wouldn't have cases. All right, now let's talk about what a case is. A case does not mean somebody's sick. Okay, understand that. Case doesn't mean somebody has symptoms. It's very important to understand. They're playing with language. They're calling them cases. They're calling them COVID infections. They're nothing of the sort. What they're calling cases are people that take this test and based on one test are coming up, quote, positive. Now we've done some programs already on the epic unreliability of these and all viral tests. Okay, it's not just this is an unreliable test, they're all unreliable. And there are cases where there are studies, they appear in medical journals, where one individual was tested sequentially 10 times. One day they were positive, the next day they were negative. The next day it wasn't clear. The next day they were positive. The next day they were negative. The next day they were negative. The next day they were positive. And it just went on and on and on. So, yes, if you test more people, you absolutely are going to come up with more positives. But when they call those cases, and then Fauci loves to call them infections, it's pure fraud. It's a case only if somebody is positive and they have the symptoms. Otherwise, it's meaningless. All right, so anyway, here's their little clip, and you can watch it and see how they dealt with it.
This morning, alarming spikes of COVID-19 cases.
What we're seeing right now is something obviously that's disturbing.
14 states seeing an uptick of more than 25%, all within the last week. This as states continue to ease restrictions, including California, where on Friday, gyms, museums, and hotels were allowed to open, even though cases climbed 5%. And there's growing concern in the southern part of the state, where early Friday, a COVID-19 outbreak forced evacuations at a nursing home. Meanwhile, other areas of the country slowing things down. This week, Nashville paused its plans to reopen further. Utah and Oregon taking similar steps.
This is essentially a statewide yellow light.
Okay, we're back. Now, here's their next little bit of nonsense. They're talking about public health officials and how they're under fire all over the country, and some of them are even getting death threats. I'm calling bullshit on that. And I remember way back in March, they were making the claim that there were death threats against Fauci. I don't believe it. I mean, anybody that's got a high profile, you're going to get all kinds of stuff. It's just inevitable. But I'm just calling bullshit on it. It's a way to make these people, Fauci and the various so-called public health officials around the country, seem like victims. Okay, they are not victims. They are very, very well-paid people. So now we're going to hear about how, oh my God, in the last month, 27 or some little number. Remember, there's 50 states. Every state has 20, 30, 40, 50. Some of them might even have 100 counties. I don't even know. But there are thousands of public health officials, and there's directors, there's deputy directors, there's assistant directors. So we're talking about thousands of people, right? And so this news item, this flash news item, is they're under the gun. And I forget what the number is. You'll see it in a second. Well, let's say it's 27. 27 have quit, retired, or been fired. Oh my God. Well, some of them might have quit because they can't stand up there and lie anymore. And they may have retired for the same reason. They may have thought, well, you know what? I've had a good run, and now I'm being told by the governor to get up there and tell everyone the world's on fire when it's not. I think it's time to retire, right? And as for people that are being fired, who knows why they're being fired? Maybe they were incompetent. Maybe they were stealing money. Maybe they were sexually harassing their staff. We don't know. So this is a small number. Whatever the number is, you'll see it in a second. And it's out of thousands of public health officials, right? And we don't know anything about why these people are leaving. We don't even know if it's statistically significant that this number of people has quit, has retired, or has been fired. So anyway, these are two tiny little clips, but I've done a lot to show you the nonsense around them. So anyway, here's the second clip.
As the CDC offers up tips, public health officials are under fire for issuing shutdown orders. A review by Kaiser Health News and the Associated Press finds that across 13 states, at least 27 state and local health leaders have resigned, retired, or been fired since April. Some have even received death threats.
They don't have any ulterior motives here. Their sole intention is to keep people healthy.
Okay, short clip. not a big deal, but this went out to millions of people. It probably played on a repeat, every hour on the hour for maybe a day or maybe two, and it creates the impression among the public that there's some catastrophic thing taking place in the world of public health, and no such thing is true. The only catastrophic thing is public health officials are following junk science. They are ignoring all the real doctors, all the real scientists, all the real statisticians, all the real epidemiologists, and they're going with the hysteria machine. And we've talked before about the fact that, Tony Fauci has a staff of at least 10 full-time people, maybe as many as 50, who have nothing else to do all day but get on the line with the news media and pump them full of, hysterical headlines. And you can see it if you watch the news. They float trial balloons. They'll try, a story, and it tries to get legs. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, and then it fades away, and then they come up with another one, and then another one, and then another one. I mean, it's just it is a propaganda machine, and the goal is very simple. It's to maintain maximum hysteria. And now, I mean, that was always the goal with all these all the false reporting and epidemics over the last, 30, 40 years. That's always been the goal. Create a lot of public attention, a lot of public fear, justify the racing. And we could talk about the fact that they're racing drug development. They're skipping important trials, important steps that's going to result in very dangerous drugs being unleashed on the public. Okay, so they're doing all of that to promote drug sales. I mean, it's that simple. There's nothing more to it. The difference is this is not just media hysteria. They now have somehow taken control, functional, effective control of the operation of the world economy, and they are now inflicting pain on people very directly and very savagely. So that, believe me, when these drugs are available, or these digital certificates, or these vaccines, or whatever monstrosities these guys are cooking up, there will be a percentage of the population that will clamor for them. And of course, the media is just going to push them uncritically. So this is the situation we're in, and you're informing yourself and you're doing your own thinking, which is very important. I urge you to look around and see who you can share this material with in the alternative media. See, the problem is almost everybody that works in science or medicine for a living has a job to protect. Unless they're a tenured professor or unless they're a courageous person, and those are two pretty small groups of people. So they have a job to protect. So there is no career advancement to be had by standing up and telling the truth about this thing. In fact, it would be career suicide. I mean, I'm in a case. I'm in New York State, major hospital, head of infectious disease. So he knows all about infectious diseases because he runs the department for a major New York City hospital. He doesn't wear a mask when he's out and about. He knows it's absolute bullshit. He wears a mask at work because it's required. It makes sense. You're dealing with sick people. But to walk around the streets at this point wearing a mask, it's insanity. Is he going to get on ABC or CBS or NBC or CNN or Fox or the Wall Street Journal and New York Times and say that? Of course not. He'd like to keep his job. I don't blame him. But that creates a structural problem. So we have a whole world of doctors and physicians and nurses and public health people and epidemiologists and academics who don't feel they can say a thing. And then we have a world of journalists who are 99.999% liberal arts grads. They may never have taken a science class in their life. They certainly never received any kind of medical training or health training. But now they're writing about COVID, and they're writing about clusters, and they're writing about spikes, and they're writing about, social distancing, and they're writing about, air particle, droplets in the air, and whatever nonsense comes out of the Fauci bullshit machine, they're just regurgitating based on having no foundation in science at all. I want to leave you with this. If you know the science, It's very easy to see that this is all based on garbage junk science. And we can just go back to the New York numbers. Why did New York City have 10 times the death rate of the rest of the country's average? That cannot be because of the spreadability of the disease. It can't be because of they had a deadly strain in New York they didn't have anywhere else. It could only been because of the medical response, which is also a government response, which is also a media response. And that's the core of the problem here. Yes, there probably is a public health problem here that needs attention. Public health always needs attention. But this is not the source of the problem. The source of the problem is our medical system, which I've already said earlier, and you can verify it yourself, is the worst among all developed nations. Our government, which is beyond hope, and our media system, which is corrupt beyond belief. We're the only news media system in the world, other than New Zealand, that allows these drug companies to buy ads and therefore dominate the economics of the news. It's so clear, and yet I don't hear anybody talking about it in clear, coherent, integrated terms. And anyway, that's Brasscheck. Little aggravated, little exasperated, but we'll just keep trucking along.